Hey, what's up coders, welcome back to my channel. Today we will see how to use scoped model, which is your third-party package, to handle your app state. And also I'll be demonstrating this usage with a simple example. So whenever you're developing apps, you need to follow a particular pattern to maintain the app state. Definitely there are loads of models available like Redux, Block, MobX, Scope model, and many more. Well, I will not be discussing about which is a better pattern. As a developer, you are the one who has to decide by trying out each of them, and it also depends on the use case, your requirements, and many more factors, and then decide which is a better pattern for you. And it differs developer to developer and project. But today, the focus of this video will be only on scope model. As per the doc definition, it says that scope model is a set of utilities that allow you to easily pass data model from the parent widget down to its descendant. This is one of the simple and straightforward definition you can find about scope model. The point that you need to understand is whenever the model gets updated, it rebuilds all of your children that uses this model. That is something that you need to make a note of it. And also scope model extends listenable widget and inherited widget, and that's what makes it so powerful for state management in Flutter. So regarding the scope model package details, I'll add a link in the video description with the version that I'm using. And if I have to keep talking about this model, it's never ending. I think the best way to understand this would be to work on a simple application and understand how model works and what is the descendant and all those details. Alright, so moving on to the demo, I have here a very simple one-page application where I have a donate button, a counter with a plus which increases the donation amount and decrements, and then a cancel button here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the plus, which actually increments my donation, and I'm going to be a little generous by giving $20. There you go. And then I'm going to click on donate. When I do that, you could see that the image remains the same, the background. This container gets updated. So when I click on it, you can see that it says thank you for donating, and the amount appears whatever I selected in my previous counter. And if I want to donate more, I get the same value here, and I'm going to say this time it's going to be $25, and then I'm going to click on donate, and you can see this gets updated as well. So here purely I've used scope model. So let's move on with the implementation and see how I've separated the model from the UI. Alright, so for the implementation, you just need one package, which is your scoped model, and this is the version that I'm using. And to find out more details about the scope model, you can find the details in the link that I will be providing in the video description. So definitely you can go through the package details, and also make sure that you have this package imported in your Dart file. So get the dependencies and get the package, and you're good to go with your scope model implementation. Alright, so once you're done adding the package details, before building the project, you need to understand the structure of the project. So if you look at the use case that I'm implementing, it's a simple single screen where it has a background image, and this is a container that I've used, and the container has few details here. Now, so for that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a single Dart file which holds or which contains only the UI part of it, and then there is this model class which contains all the business or the logic part of it. So we're going to have two files. So the main.dart file here, which I use, is just for the material app and the theme data, but then the screen that contains all the UI is this donation model screen, and this is the file where I would be adding all the UI. So first let's create the UI, then we will move on with the model, and then I'll show you how to add the scope model and the descendant. Alright, so first let's start with the UI. So to start up with, first I'm going to start with a container where the image is being placed. So let's update those details. Then I'm using a decoration, which is the box decoration, to add the image. Alright, so we have built a container which holds the image, and this image is from a network image. And if you look at the emulator now, you can see the entire image is appearing here. Now we will focus on the container, which is this white container with the details. Alright, so let's work on the container. So it's going to be a child container, and inside the container I'm going to have a column widget. And since I wanted the white container to appear in the bottom section, I'm going to give a main axis alignment. And inside this, I'm going to give a material widget. And I use material widget just to give that elevation and some shadow color to it. And then I give this rounded corner, so I give a border radius. To get that rounded corner, I give a border radius, and this border radius is only on the top left and top right. Now inside this is the place where I decide whether I have to display the main content or the confirmation content. So for that I have built two separate widgets. So in the beginning, since I've not covered the model yet, scoped model yet, so I'm just going to show you the initial content that would be displayed, which is the counter one with the donate button. So I'm going to build this content first, and then depending on the model condition, it will display this content. At the moment, we will say just build. So let's work on the build init content. Now, build init content, what I've done is I have created that as a single container with column widgets inside it. So this would be your title section, this would be your price container, and a donate container. So there are three widgets inside a container. Think let's give a height, because we need it's not going to take the entire screen, so let's give a 250. Alright, so I'm just going to comment this and let's see how it looks on the emulator. So there you go. So you can see that container with the round border, because we had given that radius here. So you can see that. So first let's work on the title, and then we will work on the other widgets as well. So first thing is the title container. Alright, so if you look at the structure of the title container, it's a simple container with a row widget and the combination of your text. So you must have seen in most of my videos how I get the text and row column combination. So similar approach, I'm going to use it. So let me implement it and then I'll just walk through it. Or the text appearing just one below the other and the cancel button. So it's purely a row column combination text widgets here. So nothing much here. Alright, so next moving on to the price container, it's nothing but a row widget in combination with the raw material button, so that I could get this circular shape and border, and this is the price text. So I'll show you how to work on this. So this is the price container widget. So let's work on the implementation of the price container. So first I'm going to use a raw material button. I'll show you how it works. Inside this you're going to have on pressed. So at the moment I'm just leaving it empty. Property, and inside this I'm defining the icon. Now moving on to the shape, how to achieve that circular shape. Alright, so we can see that the first icon appears. So similar way I'm going to add the text and the plus icon here. So let me work on that part as well. So for the dollar symbol, so if you want, I'll add a link in the description as to how to find the code for individual symbols. As of now, we don't have a model count here, so I'm just going to keep it simple by adding $50 here and the text. And similar way, I'm just going to use the raw material button for the plus, and I'm going to add it below the text so that it appears next to it. So instead of minus, it would be plus here. There you go. So you can see a minus, the amount and the plus. Once we implement the model, you would find this static value replaced with a model value. So this is about the counter, and next is the button. So the button is a simple raised button. So I'm just going to quickly add that, and then we will move on with the other content, which is the thank you confirmation page. So once we have both these content built, then we'll move on with the model class. So I've worked on the donate button. So there you go. You can see the text, the counter and the donate. Now we will work. So we have finished this content. Now let's work on this content, which is nothing but a text and a button. So I'm going to quickly work on this and just walk through the code immediately. So I have added the build content widget. Now this build content is the one that is responsible for building this content of the container, and which has just the text and button details, nothing more. So it's the similar fashion as my build init. I have done this, but I have not used this widget yet because I will look for a condition, and when I click on the donate, that's when this widget has to reflect. So as of now, it's just a column with a thank you text and a back button, and thank you is nothing but another column widget with all the details, and the back button is nothing but a raised button, not defined. So this is the UI, and which I have separated it in individual widgets, so that way it is easy for us to pick up depending on our condition. Now we will move on with the model class. The model class is pretty simple and straightforward. First thing, get your package. Next, extend model, which is important. Now in my use case, I need a counter, so I'm going to give a variable called int count equals 0, which is the initial count, and then I'm going to give a boolean variable which says donate clicked. I need to find if my donate button is clicked or not, and depending on that I want a different container to reflect. So for that reason I'm using this extra parameter. Now then I'm going to use the getter. So it's going to be get count and the count parameter, and similarly my donate clicked, if I've clicked on the donate button or not. So I'm going to find out using this parameter and update it also, and then I'm going to say donate clicked. So let's define the logic of the increment and decrement here. If I had not used the scope model, then you could have seen the increment decrement happening here in the init state and set state and updating it here itself. But here when I use scope model, what happens is that this is purely my UI. And when I come to the model part, this is where all the logic happens. Going forward, so let's work on the increment function first. Similarly, I'm going to add the decrement. Then I'm also going to have another setter function which is for donate clicked. Alright, so as I mentioned, we define the model class to manage the state. So all our increment decrement happens in these two functions, and the reason that I'm using a notify listener is that if you remember that in the beginning of the video I had mentioned that whenever the model is updated, it rebuilds all your children that uses the model. Alright, so in order to notify your descendant that the model has changed, we need to call this notify listener. So only this is the one that's actually responsible and rebuilt. In order to notify the listener and rebuild the descendants, we have to use this method, or else it will not rebuild it. Alright, so this is the model part of your application. Now we have to see how to use the scope model and connect it. Alright, so we have the model, we have the UI section. Now we will try to add the scope model. So the first thing what we have to do is we have to create an instance of the model class. So here I'm going to use donation model. That's my model class, and I'm going to give a name donation model, and then I'm going to say donation model. Now next what I have to do is, since I want it to be available throughout my descendants, I'm going to define it in the main.dart file, which is before the material app. So what I'll do is I'm going to say scope model donation and define the model name. So I'm going to say scope model, and this would be my model name, and the model donation model and the material app, and then close the braces. So now we have defined our scope model here. We have defined our model. Now we have to define the scope model descendant. Now this is nothing but it's a widget which actually rebuilds when the model notifies that a change has taken place. That is, when I click on the increment or decrement, the value changes, and when the model notifies that a change has taken place, it rebuilds it. So that is what the descendant does. So let's quickly define the descendant, and then I'll show you the places where how you could use the model to update your UI. Section that I'm going to use my scope model descendant is here. So initially it was just the initial content. Now instead of initial content, I'm going to use and I'm going to pass three properties inside it. One is the context. Here what I'm going to do is I'm going to check for the condition. I'm going to say model dot, and then I'm going to say if my donate is clicked. So I think I have used my donation button is clicked, then I want a different UI to display. So the UI that I want to display is build content, which is the thank you details. If not, I want it to display the initial content, which is the price counter, which has that increment and decrement counter. Then I'm going to say return build init content. So this is where a simple if condition is added to check if my build content container has to reflect or the init content has to reflect with the model changed values. So now we need to pass on all the model values in the respective UI section. So first let's start working on the init. So here you have the init section. So I'm going to pass the donation model, and then inside my price container I need the model detail, and even in the donate container I need it because I would be checking if I clicked on the donate button or not. So I'm going to pass it here as well, and here it's going to pick the same value. So let's have a look at the price container. So in the price container, we don't want this static value anymore. So here we are going to replace it with and my count value. So that's how it'll ensure that my count value gets updated accordingly. Then we need to add the functions in the increment and decrement button. So on pressed, yeah, there you go. So here we are going to add model dot decrement. So we'll call these functions here. Similarly, for the increment, we are using model dot increment. So we are done with the increment decrement displaying of the price, and when I click on donate, it has to find if my donate is clicked and then display this content. Now let's add the details, the model values. So for that we are using build content. So let's go to the build content and let's add the donation. And then similarly in the thank you text we need to, okay, it's the donation model. Pass the value in the thank you text. We need to pass the donation model. There you go. So it says thank you for donating and we need to enter the amount. So instead of entering the static amount, we would be using the model value. So model, and then I'm going to say count. So there you go. So we have updated the count value. So here if you look, I've not added the functionality or logic. All I'm doing is I'm adding all them in the model class and I'm just calling them using the model here. So that's how you use scope model in your Flutter application. So let me quickly build this and show you the demo. There was this one more model missing, that is when I click on donate, the content has to change to this. So for that we have our donate container with the button, which is the raised button, and the text. So here on pressed, all I have to do is model donate clicked and I'm setting it to true. So what happens is it immediately sets the donate to true, and then if it is true, immediately this value gets updated and then it notifies. So the moment it notifies if it's true, then what happens is it checks in the scope model descendants checks if this condition is true, then it has to replace the content with this container, which is nothing but the confirmation container. So that was the extra check that I have added. Yeah, so let's quickly check the emulator, and there you go. So $10, and then I'm going to say donate, and there you go. You can see the $10 reflecting. Alright, so this is how you use scope model in your Flutter application, and there are a few more details that I wanted to highlight, that is the pros, cons, or the advantage, drawbacks about this particular model. When to use this model. So if as a developer, if you're not familiar with streams, and or if your model is not too complex, say for example it's a simple app, just you have to pass the donation value, or it could be a simple login, or it could be a counter app, just passing a very simple information. So in those kind of scenarios, definitely you can go for the scope model. And some more advantages would be your business logic, your state management, and your UI code. There is a separation, and it's very simple and easy to use also. And a couple of drawbacks is the global state, that is you have to get used to the habit of declaring the state model, putting them in top of all the classes like the one here, and so that's an extra constraint that you should always keep thinking about it, that okay, you have to add this, and the hidden dependencies. So when your application gets complex, it's hard to keep track as to when you have to call the notify listener. Produces more build time, because each time the model notifies its listener, it has to rebuild the whole tree which is under the scope model widget. So that causes the number of builds to be more. When your application gets complex, you will not know when precisely which part of the model has to be changed. So if your application is simple and not complex and you don't want to use stream, then just go for scope model. If not, we do have a couple of other patterns that you could follow. So yeah, that's it for this video. Hope you like it. If you do like, please give it a like and do subscribe. And if you find this informative, please do share it. Thank you.